little vertical hope from Faith Builders Ministries today. I was in Proverbs 18:16, where it says this: a gift opens the way for the giver and ushers him into the presence of the great. So I've heard all my life that your gift will make room for you. Whatever God's put in you as your gift. And I found that to be true. I just want to share with you. I was in California, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 20, probably. It was a long time ago. We were stationed there. And I remember just fasting and praying to the Lord for like months, like a couple of months. And I just had this no-so in me that I was just made for something more than what I was doing. And I really felt like God had something to say to me and that I really needed to bring this to the throne in fasting and praying. So I did. And at the end of this fast, this is what I heard. I heard the Lord say, Michelle, write a book. Well, I think I've shared a little bit before with you, but I was flabbergasted. But I said, okay, because I know it was him. I said, okay, Lord, okay, I'll write a book. So I called my husband, and we had just gotten a new computer with a printer. And I said, listen, how can I get to a piece of paper? The Lord told me to write a book. And Marty was like, what? I said, yeah, the Lord has told me to write my testimony. He said, okay. So I didn't know. Number one, English was not my forte. Writing it or speaking it really. And number two, I was electronically challenged. I've gotten so much better, but still I didn't even mess with computers at all. So for me to even think that I was going to get on the computer and write or do anything with it, just had to be from God. So anyway, I started writing my testimony, and I got 4 chapters in it. And on the 4th chapter, at the end of the chapter, I had written this: I have forgiven my dad, my real dad, and put a period. And that night, I got a phone call from my stepmom, Linda, and she had told me that my dad went to the hospital and had an aneurysm in his stomach, and he died suddenly. I mean, I collapsed to the floor and started bawling for many reasons. But for one reason, we weren't that close. But I always thought the chance to be close to him was there. It just hadn't happened yet. So I really was crying because that chance was lost now forever. We would never get to heal that broken relationship. So I just grieved and cried, and I started writing poetry. I didn't really know I had a gift of poetry in me until this moment. So I was writing poetry constantly for about 13 poems I had written. And in the meanwhile, in between my dad passing and me started writing poetry, we got orders to move to Tennessee. I believe it was Knoxville, Tennessee. Yes, it was. Okay, so I just stopped everything. We moved. We spent many months looking for a church, and we found a church, Knoxville Christian Center. We started going, and it was in January, and they start this 21-day fast every year. So we started fasting. And in that, I was on the 3rd day of that fasting, and the Lord reminded me of the book. He says, remember, Michelle, I asked you to write the book. So I immediately got to the computer and looked on the computer, and it was gone. The whole book the 4 chapters were absolutely gone, which was probably a good thing because there was a lot of healing happening in those 4 chapters, probably not for anybody else's eyes. So the Lord prompted me to start writing, so I started writing. And I was about in the 3rd chapter during the fast, and I said, Lord, how do you want me to head up these chapters? How do you want me to, what do you want to call them? And he told me, every poem I gave you in California will be the beginning of each chapter. I said, well, what do I put? He goes, write the whole book first, and then I'll show you where to put the poems. Well, I had 13 poems, so I figured 13 chapters. Well, one day I was sitting reading a magazine, and they had a poetry contest. And I felt like the Spirit of God said, enter this contest. I said, okay. So I got my 13 poems out, and I go, which one? And he said, a new one. And I just started writing. And I wrote this poem called Ripened on the Vine. I entered it, and I get so passionate about God. I entered it. It won Editor's Choice Award, and it ended up being the title of my testimony, my book called Ripened on the Vine. I had 14 chapters. And how good God is I wrote all those chapters. And you know those 13 poems that I wrote in California? Each chapter of the book has a poem in front of it. And in that poem explains that chapter. Only God could orchestrate that gift. Only God could orchestrate that to come out the way it did. I started something in California, finished it in Knoxville. God put every poem in the chapter that it belonged to. I mean, I just thought I was just grieving and writing my grief in those poems, but God was building a book, building my testimony called Ripen on the Vine. And that book has been out for, it's been out for a while. We did a new rendition of it a few years back and added a chapter in honor of my mother. But anyway, this is the thing. God will make room for your gifts. I never even knew that I had the gift of writing. I had no idea, but God made room. And now I think I've written 5 books so far, and just believing whenever He's ready, He'll give me the 6th one. So that's just a little encouragement for you today, that I just want you to know whatever God's calling you to do in your life, He'll make room for that gift. He'll make a way when there don't seem like there's any way. God bless you. I'm so excited. And I take those books into prison and donate those books into the prison. You know, the Lord is using that book mightily, and He made room because He's faithful to His word. He's so faithful to His word that He says, I watch over my own word. That's pretty darn faithful. Okay, so the vertical hope for you today is that, you know, He's put a gift in you and He'll make room for you. Just be patient and wait upon Him, and He'll show you how He's going to use that gift that He's instilled in you for such a time like this. Amen. Amen. Bye-bye.